My grandmother thinks the solution to almost every problem is food. Sad? Eat. Stressed? Eat. Heartbroken? Definitely eat. Meanwhile, my generation deals with emotional crises by posting cryptic Instagram notes like don't text. Same emotion, very different coping mechanisms. And that brings me to my topic for today, the space between us when love changes its language. And this discussion perfectly describes the relationship between generations today. We live in the same houses, we sit at the same dinner table, we even share the same last names. Yet, sometimes it feels like we're speaking completely different languages. At home, I'm the family tech support. Somehow, I can solve a Wi Fi problem simply by turning it on and switching it back on again. And my family looks at me like I just hacked into a high security government database. But you see, that's the funny thing about generational gaps. What looks like pure mythical magic to one generation is just an basic skill to another. And I can say this with full confidence that there will be a day when the technology that is all too simple for me to understand today will probably have me stumped as well. Honestly, I think the biggest reason for such an enormous generational gap is the invisible emotional distance between generations, between parents and children, grandparents and teenagers, tradition and modern life. Because somewhere between beta, when I was your age, and you wouldn't understand, an entire communication gap was born. You see, the older generation has grown up in a completely different world. A world where photos were printed, not filtered. A world where conversations happened face to face. Where the silence between messages didn't feel like a mystery to solve. And then there's us, a generation emotionally attached to people we've never even met and emotionally unavailable to people sitting right next to us. We say we want privacy, then we also post our entire lives online. Honestly, we confuse ourselves sometimes too. But I think every generation misunderstands the next one. Adults often say teenagers are addicted to screens. And maybe they're not entirely wrong, but what looks like screen addiction can sometimes be exhaustion or pressure or loneliness. Because our generation is growing up in a world where comparison never sleeps. There's pressure to get good grades, look attractive, have hobbies, stay productive, maintain friendships, plan our futures, and somehow still drink enough water and protect our peace. That's a lot. And then when older generations say things like, why are teenagers always so stressed these days? It's difficult to explain a type of exhaustion that is mostly mental. At the same time, I think teenagers misunderstand adults as well. Sometimes we think parents are controlling, when really they're just scared. Scared of a world changing faster than they can understand. And maybe that is the real issue. Not lack of love, but lack of translation. Because every generation has its own language for expressing care. Grandparents express love through sacrifices, parents express love through concern, and teenagers express love through sending you unnecessarily funny memes. Again, same emotion, different languages. I realized this during a family gathering once. All the adults were discussing politics, rising prices, and how kids these days just don't go out anymore. Meanwhile, all the cousins were sitting together silently on our phones. Now, from a distance, that probably looked terrible. But what nobody noticed was that we were all showing each other memes, laughing at the same videos, and arguing over who had the worst screen times. So, in our own strange way, we were connecting. And that made me think maybe connection does not disappear across generations. Maybe it just changes form. The problem begins when we assume that different automatically means wrong. A teenager wearing headphones all day is seen as disconnected. But maybe music is the only thing helping them slow down. A parent asking too many questions feels annoying, but maybe that's their way of staying involved in a life they slowly feel excluded from. Sometimes people are trying to love each other the best way they know how and still failing to feel understood. That is the space between. But maybe that space isn't empty. Maybe it's where empathy is supposed to begin. Because understanding does not happen when people are identical. It happens when people are willing to pause and listen to experiences different from their own. Maybe teenagers need to explain more instead of immediately saying, you just don't get it. Or maybe parents need to listen without turning every conversation into a life lesson. Because the truth is, no generation has it figured out. Not our parents, not our grandparents, and definitely not us. We're all just trying to survive the version of the world that we were handed. And maybe the distance between generations cannot be solved through rules or lectures or algorithms. Maybe it starts with something much simpler, a conversation, a little patience. Now, I leave you with one question. Why do we ignore those awkward silences, those misunderstandings? Because no matter which era or generation, humans have never been perfect, nor will they ever be. Thank you.